San Francisco arguably has one of the strongest rosters across the entire NFL, just coming off a Super Bowl appearance, and now they have the opportunity to continue to improve, specifically through the draft. And honestly, that might be their best skill. Despite not having 3 first-round draft picks, they have been able to remain relevant thanks to their strong selections in later rounds. So in this video, I want to go over what I think would be an ideal draft scenario for San Francisco, or the best that I'll be able to based off this NFL draft simulator. I'll also drop a link down below so you guys will have the opportunity to mess around with it. But the basic layout is on the left, you have your draft tracker, who is selecting and their needs. In the center, you have available prospects, and on the right hand side, you have your team console, who you have selected in which round. So starting off for San Francisco, I believe the most important thing here will be an offensive lineman, specifically a tackle. And I'm going to pick up Tyler Gunton here. He comes in at 6'7" and runs his 40-yard dash in 5.1 seconds. He's an absolute beast, and if San Francisco is able to pick him up, this would be ideal. He's a long-term replacement for Colt McKivitz, and maybe even in the future could slide over if Trent Williams does decide to retire. Now looking at their second pick, I'm going right back to offensive line. This is their biggest need, and in the Super Bowl, it just came out that they needed to invest more in this line. They had Jon Feliciano, and he was great, but he got injured, and then their backup, Spencer Burford, had to step in. He missed a block on that final drive, which arguably led to Brock Purdy missing the throw to Juwan Jennings or an open Ayuk. So going into this second round, San Francisco must draft a guy like Christian Haynes or even Copper Beebe, but I'm going with Christian Haynes. Over 2,400 snaps, he only gave up 3 sacks. That's absurd and exactly what San Francisco should be looking for. For a third round pick for San Francisco, things start getting a little bit more complicated. They don't have necessarily as easy as selections here with a wide receiver. Oh, there's another guard, but I'm not going to go ahead and just invest in the offensive line as it's not really feasible. I would like to see, Dwayne Carter, and that's a perfect draft selection here. You have guys like Eric Armstead, who's been revealed was dealing with a meniscus issue, and he's been struggling to stay healthy throughout these last few years. In addition to that, you have a guy like Javon Kinlaw leaving, so San Francisco will be looking towards this draft to re-solidify the interior of their defensive line, in my opinion. Now moving on to their second selection of the third round, I think San Francisco should look at the DB spot. Last year, you had guys like Logan Ryan coming in and Isaiah Oliver. Basically, the position doesn't have the depth that I would like it to see. For instance, if you draft a guy like Kyrie Jackson, it's possible that he can slide on the outside, and then you can have Lenore slide on the inside, and then Ambry Thomas could be your backup. And when you're looking at a guy like Kyrie Jackson, he comes in at 6'3", weighing 203 pounds, and running his 40-yard dash in 4.4 seconds. He's a prototypical NFL corner. After the selection of Kyrie Jackson, now we're in their fourth, and I'm just thinking about Dre Greenlaw and his injury. I do like guys like Dee Winters on the roster, but for this round, I do think I'm going to select a linebacker. Specifically, I'm selecting Tyrus Knight. He's great in coverage, and he runs his 40-yard dash in 4.6 seconds. He is a little bit smaller though, coming in at 6 foot, but this is the fourth round, so I don't think this is a terrible selection at all. Now bouncing forward to the 6th round selection, I'm going to put on my Kyle Shanahan hat and go ahead and select an edge piece. The biggest thing here for San Francisco is they have several edges leaving, like Cleveland Farrell, probably Randy Gregory, and maybe even Chase Young, who knows. But they need to definitely re-up on this position if they hope to continue to establish their identity of being one of the more dominant pass rush teams in the league. And the way in which they can do that is by drafting not Brendan Jackson, but Zion Tupuola-Fetui. He's pretty good at getting to the quarterback. He runs his 40-yard dash in 4.8 seconds. What sets him apart from other defensive linemen in this draft is specifically his first step. He's not the fastest, but as a 6th round selection, he could make an impact for San Francisco, especially as a rotational pass rush piece. For their second selection in round 6, if they have a guy like Chau Smith-Wade, even though I've already selected a corner, I think they should go ahead and make that trigger. I know it might seem like a heavy investment in a position where they already have Charvarius Ward and Lenore, but This is one of their major areas of weakness, and Smith-Wade runs his 40-yard dash in 4.51 seconds. He's 5'10", but the best part about his game is he plays outside zone corner, exactly what San Francisco runs, and for a 6th round flyer, I think he's worth drafting. For these last few selections, I think San Francisco will be looking for players that can actually feasibly make the team, and one guy that could push for a roster spot is AJ Barner. I know they drafted Cameron Latu last year, as well as Braden Willis, but Latu has been pretty ineffective, and Braden Willis, while he has seen time, isn't nearly the receiver as Barner. So this might be a great option if you're looking for a receiving option opposite of George Kittle. For San Francisco's final selection in the 6th round, if they don't bring back Jauan Jennings, I would like to see them select a wide receiver. A name that really intrigues me on this list so far is Tyrone Tracy Jr. He's not as big as Jauan Jennings, but he has extremely strong hands, he's great at catching over the middle, and he's faster than Jauan Jennings, running his 40-yard dash in 4.48 seconds, and I think this might be the perfect selection for this pick, so I'm going to go ahead and select Tyrone Tracy Jr. Now with the final pick, San Francisco has a few options. We could definitely select a safety like Jalen Green, but I don't necessarily think he'll be able to outbe a safety like Taylor Hawkins. You also have cornerbacks, but we've already drafted those, so let's keep going. And I think the thing here to move on is the offensive lineman. I know I've already drafted 2 in this draft, but he's another guard, and he can fill in nicely for either left or right guard. He runs his 40-yard dash in 5.18 seconds, 6'5", 308. And to protect Purdy, we'll go ahead and make him our final selection of this draft. So this is what my 2024 San Francisco draft class ended up looking like. With our first selection, we selected Tyler Gunton. He comes in at 6'7", weighing 328 pounds, and ran his 40-yard dash in 5.1 seconds. I believe he's the perfect fit for what Kyle Shanahan does on the offensive side of the ball. He reminds me of a young Trent Williams, maybe not as athletic, but he's right up there in terms of being an elite prospect. Our 2nd round selection, Christian Haynes, isn't too much worse. He fills in nicely for the right guard position. He comes in at 6'2", weighing 318 pounds, running his 40-yard dash in 5.2 seconds. Much like our first selection, Haynes is able to get out in space and move. Despite coming in at 318 pounds, he's pretty impressive in his agility and his acceleration. In addition to that, Haynes is one of the more prolific pass blockers in this year's draft. For our 3rd round selection, we get DeWayne Carter. He's 6'2", 308 pounds, 4'9", 540, and he plays defensive tackle. For San Francisco, this is exactly what they need, a mean run stuffer that has the ability to take on double teams. This is the player I think they envisioned Javon Kinlaw to be, but he ended up just being hampered by injuries throughout his career, and even though he had a nice uptick last year, they're probably not going to bring him back. But what I would like to see them do is go ahead and take a player like DeWayne Carter, who isn't as expensive, but still can offer nice versatility for a team that already has players like Hargrave and Armstead. Carter is just a rotational piece that you can throw in when you're expecting the run. He's perfect in my opinion. My next 3 selections were all defensive picks, the first being Kyrie Jackson in the 3rd. He comes in at 6'3", weighing 203 pounds, running his 40-yard dash in 4.44 seconds. I think he's extremely strong at running zone coverage, and he could step in nicely for San Francisco, let's say on the outside, and then Lenoir could slide on the inside, meaning Ambry Thomas could be the backup. Or even if Ambry Thomas remains a starter, then Jackson would be a much better backup than San Francisco had last year. For my 4th round selection, I decided to pick up a linebacker specifically to help replace Dre Greenlaw, and I decided to get Tyrese Knight. He's a little shorter, coming in at 6 foot, but I think he makes up with it in his weight and the way he plays. He comes in at 235 pounds, running his 40-yard dash in 4.6 seconds, and he flows downfield and gets there in a hurry. He constantly blows up runs, as well as being an effective blitzer. To start out the 6th round, I decided to help replace guys like Cleveland Farrell, Randy Gregory, and Chase Young, all guys who probably won't come back, by drafting Zion. He comes in at 6'3", weighing 248 pounds, and his 40-yard dash is 4.8 seconds. He's extremely quick off the line of scrimmage and can add mass. And coming into this system with Chris Kasarik, I expect him to be pretty good, even if it's just a rotational pass rush piece. When you're looking at the remainder of my picks, they probably won't make a huge impact their first year, but guys like Chau Smith-Wade could definitely develop into a solid backup, or you could look at a guy like Tyrone Tracy Jr. and him filling a role of Jauan Jennings. But ultimately, this was just my first draft, and I'd like to hear your thoughts down below of what you guys would do differently, and if you would like to see more videos of me drafting, or what you guys would like to see in the future. It also mean a ton if you liked and subscribe, and as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.